First, I say, some of you may not know me. I'm Joseph Lam, the director of the Confucius Institute. My partner is here, Professor Vasilius Lambopoulos, from the Modern Greek department. So this is a very unique event of combining the Modern Greek program and the Confucius Institute. The point is that we both share that to promote cultural understanding in a global context, we have to learn it from more than one nation's perspective. So for me to promote Chinese culture, I want to promote it with reference to culture. And so that reference, there's no better reference than Greece and Greek culture, because China and Greece are all very old cultures but facing very new problems. So thank you, Vasilius. And that in order for us to find this perspective, how to match these two very old and very new cultures together, so we've defined it. We found that a film or cinema would be a very useful way to look at these issues and culture and history. And as later on you will see that it is really a good pair of lectures. Well, the Chinese side will be talking about lost child and fatherhood. The Greek side will be about motherly love and emotion. So it's really good combination. If you listen to both lectures and then watch the movies tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, you really get a good package of humanity from the Chinese and Greek perspective. So let me quickly introduce the speaker for the first session is Professor Jing Zhang, and Vasilius will introduce the next one. So now, Professor Jing Zhang, of course, is a very energetic and coming shining star of the field. So basically, she's comes with the pedigree degree from Beijing University. So many good scholars from there. And then she came over and got her PhD from University of Washington and studied one of the very important Chinese literature professors, Professor Hegel. So as in scholarship, you have to have the right lineage, right? So, and since her graduation, she's been publishing many articles on culture, illustrations, literature, and painting. And today she is kind of developing her new field or more newer studies of studies matching literature, culture, and film. So without further ado, I'll present to you Professor Jing Zhang.
Thank you. Thank you to Professor Lim for a really flattering introduction. And I'm actually very grateful for this opportunity because it really pushed me to think further of a few films that I've seen recently. And they are not really art films as many academic critics would write about. So these are a few commercial films that are very widely received, very popularly received in China, but not very well acclaimed here. So I wonder about that. And then, so hopefully after my talk, you would find them more interesting. So this is my talk. I have a little PowerPoint. Okay. Slideshow. Right. Okay, so the topic of my talk is Lost Child or Lost Fatherhood, Confucian Structure of Feeling Reinterpreted. Two feature films released within half of a year in China from September 2014 to March 2015 tell similar stories about parents searching for their children lost to abduction. Oh. Can you hear me now? No? I have no idea how to make this work. Maybe I can just stay here. Okay. Is this better? Can you hear me? No? I will try. I'll try my best. Two feature films released within half of a year in China from September 2014 to March 2015 tell similar stories about parents searching for their children lost to abduction. In Dearest, 亲爱的, the first one, directed by the established Hong Kong director Peter Chan, The abduction happens in Shenzhen, the southern boom city only a river away from Hong Kong. Tian Wenjun, a star-crossed businessman and divorced father from Shanxi province, loses his 3-year-old son, Tian Pengpeng, in a district inhabited by migrants, where he rents and runs a small internet cafe. Tian embarks on a frantic and initially fruitless search, joined by his distraught ex-wife, and then the missing child support group, parents who are coping with the same trauma. 3 years later, Peng Peng is located in the rural Anhui province, but his return turns out to be no less difficult for all the parties involved, particularly the kidnapper's wife, who has been raising the boy as her son. The other movie, Lost and Love, or Shigu, in the middle here, is the debut work of the director Peng Sanyuan, a novelist known for her screenwriting for popular TV drama series that deal with family relations. In contrast to Peter Chan's tear-jerking melodrama, Peng's film presents a father's search for his son in a much more subdued and lyrical style. Lei Zequan, a farmer from Anhui province, has been on the road for 15 years, riding a motorcycle with banners of photos of his son and other lost kids whose stories he has collected on his journey. After an accident, he stops at a repair shop and befriends the mechanic, a young man named Zeng Shuai. Zeng turns out to be a lost child himself, abducted at age 4. The two lost souls join each other on the road and develop a substitute father and son relationship. Lei eventually helps Zeng find his biological parents and brings him back to his birthplace. The movie ends in Lei consulting a Buddhist monk and hitting the road once again. So both movies are based on real-life events that made sensational stories in news and social media. Both directors emphasize their goal to arouse people's attention to the severe situation of child kidnapping and trafficking in China. In February 2015, Andy Lau, a Hong Kong star who plays Lei Zequan, made a timely public good advertisement that calls attention to child safety during the Spring Festival travel rush, or Chunyun, China's annual nationwide migration when everyone is going home for the traditional New Year. The ad was screened for a full month in all the major train stations and airports and greatly contributed to the box office success of Lost and Love. So despite the extreme situations and stories told in the two movies, the theme of looking for a lost family member, or 寻亲 in Chinese, for centuries has been making powerful stories in Chinese literature and cinema. As indicated by the raving reviewers on Douban, a popular online Chinese social networking website, the portrayal of a father surviving the trauma of his loss, singularly on his tenacious hope to find a child, is a most touching aspect of these movies. That a father taking a long and treacherous journey for his missing son is an uncanny resurrection of the filial son who covers 1,000 miles on foot for his missing parent, a widely celebrated image of Confucian virtue and heroism in official biographies, fiction, and drama of the 17th and 18th century. The mirroring images of the son in late imperial literature and of the father in contemporary cinema compel us to examine the cinematic fashioning of fatherly love in the light of the revival of the Confucian values and traditions in contemporary China. The state promotes filial piety through various venues, including legal regulations, museum building, and TV programs of selecting exemplary figures. Examined in this broader cultural context, movies like Dearest and Lost and Love shed light on the continuity and transformation of the Confucian structure of feeling in today's China. I borrow this term of Confucian structure of feeling from Hai Yanli in her 2007 book, Revolution of Heart, A Genealogy of Love in China, 1900 to 1950. Li proposes 3 modes of structure of feeling from the late Qing and the early Republic, 1890s to 1910s, through the May 4th and post-May 4th periods, 1920s to 1940s. That is, the Confucian mode that emphasizes virtues, the Enlightenment mode that promotes free love, and the Revolution mode that calls for a total commitment to the nation by subordinating the romantic imperatives to that of revolution. In today's China, in the post-revolution capitalist China, the revival of discourses on filial piety, the core of Confucian value, virtue, and ritualized expressions of feeling, both continues the nationalist discursive exploitation of the family-state parallel and shifts the attention from the heroic to the everyday, and from the elite models to the grassroots citizens. In the following talk, I will first give a very quick overview of the xunqin, or looking for one's family member, theme in the Ming and Qing narratives, and of its remaining appeal to modern and contemporary Chinese sentiment. Then I will examine the cinematic image of a searching father in the context of visual constructs of lower class, striving fathers in both popular and state-controlled media. In the last part, I will re-examine the theme of return in the Xunqin movies, reading it as both symptomatic of disappearing and disintegrating home and indicative of human bonding beyond human bonding and empathy beyond the familial and the consanguineous in China's rapidly transforming society. Xunqin stories or accounts in traditional China share this following plot. A parent, mostly a father, decides to leave home for one reason or another. When the son is either unborn or very small, growing up with his mother, the son feels an increasing longing for his absent parent, tormented by his guilty feeling of being unfilial. He eventually, either as young as 14 or as old as in his 50s, leaves home to find his parent. The story almost always ends in the son and the parent reuniting and returning home, and occasionally in the son carrying home the bones of his deceased parent for a proper burial. The earliest account appears in both anecdotal and official histories in 12th century. In the history of Ming Shi, compiled during the reign of the Qing Emperor Kangxi, the term traveling 10,000 li for one's missing parent, 万里寻亲, is listed as a typical act of exemplary filiality. And this term testifies the popularity of such accounts in that time. It is said that once a filial son brought back his parent, local people vied to express their admiration by writing biographies, poems, or even 传奇 drama about him. So while historical accounts are very restrained and succinct in narrative style, the fictional and dramatic elaborations fixate on the filial son's tormented body, on his profuse tears, on the blood he draws from his finger to write sutras and attract crowds, and on his powerful sneezing that scares a tiger to death. This magic sneezing, which appears in an early Qing novel, clearly edges on absurdity and indicates satirical handling of a cliched motif and of Confucian moral and ritual institution. Nevertheless, this traditional motif continued to be fascinating for the modern and contemporary Chinese audience. At the turn of the 20th century, when Lin Shu finished translating Jimmy Brown Trying to Find Europe by the American journalist and humorist William Livingston Alden, he came up with a Chinese title that reads, Looking for His Parent, an American Kid Travels 10,000 Miles. 美洲童子万里寻亲记. Although the protagonist is not motivated by his filial longing. While Jimmy Brown does end up encountering his mother in Europe, Lin Shu, in his reflection essay, applauds the father-son bond, or 父子, in this novel as amazingly familiar and disputes against his contemporaries' critique of the Confucian father as repressing. Lin Shu's misinterpretation presents an elitist endeavor to make the Western stories serve the Chinese essence at the turn of the last century. 80 years later, another similar misinterpretation happened to the Chinese lyrics of the theme song for a very popular Japanese anime series. Mimi Liu Lang Ji, or novelist Boy Remy, was produced by Tokyo movie Shinsha in 1977, based on a French novel, Sans Famille, written by Hector Mallet in 1878. The anime series was introduced to Hong Kong and then China in 1980, and was an immediate hit. The theme song from the series was very popular. Kids born in the 70s, myself included, grew up singing the lines, quote, "I want to find my father. I'm determined to look for my father. Even if I have to search every corner of the world, my dear dad has not been found yet. If you happen to see him, please try to persuade him to come back home," end quote. I remember we were simultaneously moved and confused by the lyrics. Moved because many of us didn't see our own fathers that often, who were working hard for the socialist state-building enterprise away from their wives and children. Confused because in the anime, the boy Remy is not looking for his father at all. The lyrics of the Chinese theme song are entirely from the Japanese original. Whoever wrote the lyrics, which I still haven't find out, must have known how powerfully the theme of the filial son looking for his father would touch the Chinese audience. Chanting the lines, "I want to find my father," kids of my generation also saw in newspapers, on TV, and in real life many a tearful scenes of men from Taiwan coming to the mainland by taking the detour through Hong Kong to find their families whom they had left in 1949. Whether they were middle-aged men looking for their parents, usually mothers, or in their 60s searching for their wives and children from their first marriage, they were all called 海外游子, or sons who traveled abroad or overseas. In the Analects, everybody remembers this line. The master says, "While his parents are alive, the son may not go abroad to a distance. If he does go abroad, he must have a fixed place to which he goes. 父母在不远游，游必有方." And if he does, he will be forever longing to return. And I'll come back to the theme of return in the last part of my talk. In China on Screen, Cinema and the Nation, published in 2006, Chris Berry and Mary Farker discuss how the traditional codes of filiality, loyalty, and brotherhood circulate across a century of Chinese cinema as mythic symbols of national identity, ideal masculine behavior, and institutional governance. I quote, "In the early 20th century, there was a dual discursive reversal, from old to young within the family and from family to ruler within the state. That is, from filiality to state loyalty. 20th century Chinese film reflects this shift. It involved overthrowing established imperial notion of legitimate governance in order to establish a modern nation state in which subjects become citizens." Berry and Farker identify narrative patterns in Jackie Chan's early movies in the 70s and 80s as quote-unquote saving the father, and in Zhang Yimou's early movies as quote-unquote killing the father. The two movie makers, although very different in background, cinematography, storytelling interests, and agenda, use the image of the father very similarly as empty signs of traditional values. In other words, the father has to remain distant, cold, sick, almost effaced, or simply dead in order for the son to become the protagonist. I want to briefly show three more examples here. The first two here are the early semi-autobiographical works by Hou Xiaoxian from Taiwan and by Jiang Wen from China. Both directors wrote the scripts for their movies. So the first one is A Time to Die, A Time to Live, 童年往事. It was made in 1985. It is a memoir of Ho's childhood and adolescence in the 1950s. In the movie, the father stays in a coma and is the first family member to die. Made in 1994, In the Heat of the Sun, 阳光灿烂的日子, portrays Jiang Wen's teenager years during the Cultural Revolution in Beijing. The male protagonist's father is a military officer and mostly absent from home. The snapshot here shows one of the father's fleeting visits back home. The father is trying to caution his son against making bad friends, meaning friends from very problematic class background. In this scene, the son is seated higher than his father, indicating his rebellious position and the father's weakened authority at home, an inversion of the traditional father-son hierarchy that also symbolizes the Cultural Revolution spirit. The father's absence, due to constant calls to the war-threatened southern frontiers, also indicates the usurpation of the father's role by the Communist Party. In the next movie, The Nightly Rain in Bashan Mountain, 巴山夜雨, a film made in 1980 and one of the first films to reflect on the Cultural Revolution, the rehabilitation of a persecuted intellectual, an emasculated male poet, comes along with his serendipity reunion with his small daughter and the restoration of his fatherhood. The poet has never seen his daughter, who was born after his imprisonment. It is his poem that his late wife made into a song for their daughter that enables the recognition of the father and daughter. And the girl is a little beggar who has sneaked onto the same ferry that is transporting the poet, still in detention, to an initially unknown and seemingly dangerous destiny. And this emphasis on the father's cultural legacy renders the father and daughter reunion a metaphor of generational reconciliation beyond the shared, painful memory of the recent violent past. In contrast to these earlier presentations of the father as either empty or emptied icon of social, political, and cultural authority, recent movies such as Dearest and Lost in Love viscerally identify and sentimentalize the father through his loss, suffering, endeavor, and hope. Here I want to play two short clips of the painfully honest moments when the two protagonists reflect their role as a father from one is from Lost in Love, the other is from Dearest. The protagonist Lei Zequan was just beaten up by a group of villagers because he was trying to identify a boy and see if he was his own son.
秀吗？没发生，那么秀，那么秀，没发生。他已经在海水腐蚀了。你什么东西修了？没法修了。走开！
这要被人打几次了？
就这一次。
我不知道，我父母会不会始终没找我的？
会找的。我在路上才会觉得对得起儿子。不管他在哪儿，我都希望他知道他妈妈在找他。没有，没有。
挺好的，没有。我一直就知道我不是他们的孩子，但我想告诉他，丢了孩子的父母可以满世界的喊，我不敢喊。原来我担心，我来不及长大，没找到他们，我就死掉了。现在我长大了，我又担心，我来不及找到他们，他们就死掉了。
如果亲爹跟你一起，我想他也会这样的。怕你不了。
And the next one is from the other movie, Dearest. And this is the gathering of the missing child support group. The parents who lost their children get together and support each other.
欢迎大家再次相聚到我们班寻子会。这个伟大的家，我再重申一遍，我们丢失的孩子是不可替代的，坚决不能再生下一个，要永远找下去。有请田文军和家人共同分享。
我在来深圳有这点，一开始啊，这做生意挺赔的，后来啊就跟老婆也离婚了，没想到就到后来把孩子也给丢了。哎呀，你就觉着啊，撑着自己那好像最后一根线也断了。我回家口对着镜子，我跟自己说：“我说田文俊，我这孩子你一定得找，只要你想找，他就肯定能找，对不对？”可是后来吧，你就觉得有些事儿你想不太明白。你说我这孩子让人也给拐走了，我这都成个人下人了，你说他们还来骗我？人怎么能这样？
So in the first sequence from Lost and Love, we see a substitute father and son bond between Lei Zequan and Zheng Shuai, the mechanic he encountered on the road. They develop a kind of father and son relationship through bodily intimacy. They pulled and wrestled with each other in the sand and then we see a gentle touch in the bathing pool, and then later a playful slap on the lounge chair. So only through their animated bodies can they let go their long suppressed feelings towards their absent child and parents. And notably, they start fighting over Lei's old motorcycle, a tool that Lei Zequan holds dear because it keeps him on the road and makes him feel as a good father and a strong man. Yet instead of taking Lei Zequan forward with his life, the motorcycle only drags him back to the past of his traumatic loss. So by forcing Lei to part from his trashed vehicle, Zheng Shuai, the young man, both vents his own frustration, but also pushes Lei Zequan to developing new emotional ties with strangers like Zheng himself as another way to survive the loss. And by contrast, in the sequence from Dearest, Tian Wenjun maintains his composure and uses words or rationality to reflect on his identity as a father. Fatherhood is the last layer of his male dignity that has worn really thin in a big city where he has already lost his business and his wife. Moreover, Tian seems as despondent about his own doomed fate as shocked by the total lack of empathy or even the basic moral principle in those vicious strangers who try to take advantage of his loss and trick him for money. Tian is determined to find his son so as to retrieve his dignity. Yet with his triumph comes the moment of his emotional collapse. And I want to show another clip here. This is when Tian Wenjun and his ex-wife, as well as the organizer of the missing child support group, they followed a lead and went to Anhui province in the village and then found Peng Peng. And the parents were so anxious to take their child, they couldn't wait for the police to come. So they actually performed another kidnapping of the kid from his current mother. The kidnapper's wife insisted she didn't know anything about his late husband's crimes. And that's the scene. This is another girl, the woman, the kidnapper brought home to his wife. So here, he was the father, Tian Wenjun, was trying to reconnect with his child by reviving the latter's memory of their favorite song. The song was sung in their dialect rather than Mandarin Chinese. That's Shanxi dialect. And then the father and son used to sing the song together in order to alienate the wife, because the mother really insisted the father should speak with his son in Mandarin Chinese in the big city of Shenzhen instead of reminding him of his root. So here, of course, the boy entirely forgets. So his forgetting indicates a kind of betrayal to the father, but also a kind of denial of his identity here. Because for Tian Wenjun, the son not only represents his bond with the son, but also his own identity as a drifting migrant worker in the metropolis of Shenzhen. And even worse, the child is now calling mom in a different dialect and to a different woman who is no other than the kidnapper's wife. And here, even more ironic is that the lyrics of the song says, the big uncle and the little uncle, they are both uncles. But here the problem is there is only one woman who can claim the legitimacy of being a mother, and this is the point. This is the cause of all the drama in the second half of the movie, both in legal and emotional terms. But I don't want to spoil your pleasure of viewing the film here, so I would like to shift our attention to another image of a father caught in between the past and present and future, actually. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so this is another iconic picture that Central Television, 中央电视台 Central Television Moving China program was used for their debut program of Moving China, 感动中国, in the year of 2002. So this program is a popular annual program and screened during the Spring Festival. Every year, 10 outstanding Chinese people or groups are selected as inspirational figures and model citizens, and then they get recognized, get the recognition on the program. And these people range from government officials to movie stars, like Jackie Chan, for instance. He got the recognition in 2003 for his endeavor to promote Chinese culture and his service to public good. And they also include sports stars, writers, artists, and also average people doing extraordinary things. So in 2002, the debut year of the program, they selected the million Sanxia migrants, Sanxia 百万移民, as the recipients of a special recognition. 1.2 million people had to relocate for the construction of the Three Gorges Dam, as everybody must have heard about this. So the original black and white picture was taken by a journalist on May 14, 2001, when residents of the Nanxi town, one of the 116 towns in Chongqing region, were leaving their homeland, an ancient town of more than 1,000 years old. The ferry was taking, you see in the background is the ferry. The ferry was taking them to their new residency in Jiangsu province on the east coast, 1,000 miles away. The man whose name is Tang Weiming was said to be the last one to board the ferry that day. The baby girl he is holding in his arms is actually his niece, and his daughter, who is ahead of him, looking back, is hurrying her father on board. In the black and white picture, Tang is looking back while his body is ready to move forward. He looks like being caught from behind. His alerted eyes and pressed lips indicate his more readiness for adventure than nostalgia. In the color picture, however, he's looking upwards, kind of submissively, as if for guidance from above, and his slightly open mouth suggests uncertainty about his future in the distant land. Although Tang's feelings are very hard to read in these pictures, the state-run Central Television's visual sampling of his story clearly serves to state its agenda of promoting the traditional value of self-sacrifice, that is, sacrificing the small interest of one family for the great interest of the country. At the same time, Tang's image also helps to reinterpret the forced massive migration as an individual parent's choice to strive for a new and better life elsewhere. For the audience in 2002, this image of Tang may have quickly blended into the crowds of migrant workers that have started to swarm into cities since the beginning of China's reform and opening up, and especially so in the 90s and early 21st century. Both the caption on the photo and the CCTV anchor's speech emphasize that his daughter is urging him to board, full of joy and excitement for the long journey ahead. The anchor ends by pointing to the sleeping baby in his arms and commenting rather lightheartedly that when the baby wakes up, she will find herself in her new home 1,000 miles away. So indeed, the baby's sleep is blessed by her little charged memory of reality. The father's sleep, however, will be perpetually haunted by the dream of returning to his homeland, a cultural dream prescribed by the long Chinese family tradition and burned in the memories of literary and cultural texts. Fruitless returns and disappeared homes in this region appeared in two movies that came out in 2007, Getting Home, 落叶归根, directed by Zhang Yang, and Still Life, 三峡好人 by 贾樟柯. Both movies are centrally concerned with the Xunqin theme. Getting Home is a comedy tinged with dark humor. After the sudden death of his best friend, old Zhao, Lao Zhao, a construction worker decides to carry his buddy's corpse all the way from Shenzhen to the dead man's distant hometown to fulfill their mutual promise that one will take the other's body home for burial if something happens. In Still Life, 三峡好人, two principal characters from Shanxi province arrive in Fengjie separately to find their errant spouses. A coal miner looking for his wife, who was abducted and sold to him and then ran away with their baby daughter 16 years ago. And a nurse searching for her husband, whom she hasn't seen or heard from for 2 years. Still Life has inspired many studies among academic viewers. Getting Home, I think, still deserves more attention. I would like to play the last sequence of the movie and conclude my talk by talking a little bit about it. Okay. Let's see. Here is the last sequence. So by this point, Lao Zhao has already exhausted his means, and he had to have his friend's body cremated. So he's carrying his ashes here.
年里一直在找您，但一直没您的消息。我们知道错了，我们请求您的原谅。这里永远都是您的家，我们等着你回家。新家的地址：湖北省宜昌市新田镇平安新村，儿小斌。走吧，这个宜昌还有7个。
Okay, this is the end of the movie here. So the serene surface of the scene, such as the peaceful spread of water, the calm voice of the boatman, the controlled solemnity of the visitors, and the quiet disarray of rubble, forms a powerful contrast to the untold, effaced stories of separation and destruction. Except for the reading by the policeman in the monotonous voice of the son's note to their lost father, and there is a mistake in the subtitle I just noticed. We still don't know for what reason the father left home to become a migrant worker in the South, and the son was apologizing in the note, but they didn't say why or what they did wrong. It is in, except for the reading, so the policeman read this note out in the monotonous voice of the son's farewell to the father, to the lost father. And it is this discovery of an embedded Xunqin story, an uncanny resurrection of the traditional filial son looking for his lost father, that concludes old Zhao's journey and provides meaning to his almost absurd mission. Another uncanny revival of the traditional filial son carrying the bones of his deceased parent home. And I noticed the angle of the camera seems very interesting here. It's kind of high above, looking down at the two travelers. And the two travelers look a bit tired, weighed down by complex feelings. And the camera's position adds to their movement a sense of deliberation and a ritual formality, as if they are following a route to a mourning site, a grave. The first visit becomes already a return. By paying close attention to their steps on the slope, among the ruins, and into the house carefully and respectfully through the original door, which miraculously survived and still stand there, the camera's eye becomes the vigilant eye of the ancestors, or perhaps it is old Zhao's friend who is watching. Earlier in the movie, old Zhao seemed to have seen his friend's spirit flying out of the cremation furnace chimney. So the lost father has already found his way home even before his friend. And it is the son who is fated to remain on the road, still there, searching, trying to find his way to return. So that's my talk. Thank you.